Hi guys, it's Robyn and welcome to my channel. So today's cake is sure to get your spider senses tingling because I'm going to show you how to make a buttercream Spider-Man themed cake with a Rice Krispie Treat Spider-Man busting out the top. I just love how this one turned out and I can't wait to show you. So let's get into it. So for today's cake, I'm starting out with three 6-inch vanilla cake layers, which I've mixed with some rainbow sprinkles to make it extra fun. And as you guys can tell, it's already crumb coated and slightly crooked because funny story, when I was decorating, the power went out. So I had to finish crumb coating by the light of my phone. Not a super fun time. Do not recommend. But for anybody who wants to see that step, I cover it in almost every one of my videos, so feel free to explore my channel after you watch this one. So what you guys can see me doing here is just simply adding a second coat. I've taken a piping bag and I filled it with some red American buttercream, which I've colored with AmeriColor Super Red, and I've piped it on just very roughly, and then I've taken a small offset spatula to just sort of swish it around and smooth it out a little bit. Now to finish it off, I like to take my bench scraper, but you guys can use whatever you're comfortable with. This is just what I like to use, and we're going to keep making a few passes until everything is extra smooth. Then we're going to clean up that little lip that's left around the top by holding our bench scraper at an approximately 35 to 40 degree angle, starting at the outer edge and carefully dragging inward. And you're going to remove the icing from your bench scraper every time so you don't add it back to your cake. So for the topper, I'm cheating a little bit here and I'm using pre-made Rice Krispie treats, but I'm also going to leave the recipe down below for anybody who prefers homemade. So we're just going to roughly shape this and press it all together until we have an oval shape, and I'm going to make it narrow on one end, then I'm going to press in where his eyes are going to go to make an indentation. Then we're going to set that off to let it firm up and work on our fondant decorations. So what I've done here is roll out a piece of black fondant and I'm marking off the outline of the image that I need. For anybody who's curious about how I do this, I just draw up the little image on a piece of paper, then I cut out the lines strategically using an X-Acto knife, leaving some spots still attached so it doesn't fall apart, and then I'm able to lay that on my fondant and mark off my outline. It's actually quite easy once you get used to it. Now that we've marked off our outline and everything is relatively easy to see, we can now cut out our shapes that we need. Now the eyes are quite simple, I will admit, but the spider is a little bit tricky, so feel free to find a simpler design if you find this one a little bit iffy. So once we finish cutting out our little spider, we're going to set him off to the side to dry, but we're going to reshape him first because he's going to harden as he dries and we don't want him to firm up and look funny. Now we're going to switch over and finish off the eyes. So I've cut out the white portion using the same technique as before, and I'm just picking those up and sticking those into place because it's freshly rolled fondant and it sticks quite easily, but if you're having trouble, you can also add just a little tiny dab of water if you need. And there we go, I think they look pretty sharp, so we're just going to set these off to the side to dry until they're needed. So next up we have the hands, and I've rolled out some red fondant, a little bit thicker on one side because that's where the palm and the wrist will be. And I'm just using one stencil for both hands. I'm flipping it for that second one, and then using my X-Acto knife, I'm cutting them out very carefully. Now I'm just going to shape them a little bit and round out those little fingers, and then we're going to set it off to dry, setting in the shape that we need. Now we're just going to carefully cut out that second hand and set that off to dry as well. And once they've both had a little bit of time to firm up, then we can start painting. So for this part, we're going to be painting on the stripes using some black gel food color diluted with just a little bit of water. I don't use alcohol or anything, and it's just enough to make it a little bit runny because we're using a watercolor paintbrush. So I like to start with the longer lines first, and then we join it together with the little swoops in between. And I didn't use a template or anything, I just freehanded this. But you can do whatever you find the most easy. And there we go, don't they look neat? Now it's time to finish our topper. We are going to insert a toothpick into the head to make this job a little bit more easy. And as you guys can see, I've also added a neck because I didn't want him to look stumpy. And now we're adding a piece of nice thick red fondant around it. and I'm shaping it and smoothing it out and cutting away the excess that we don't need. And now wherever I made a cut, I'm just smushing that fondant together, and using my Dresden tool, I'm buffing it out and making it look great pretty. And now it's time to make him look like Spidey. So we're going to use that same gel food color diluted with some water as a black paint, and starting with a straight line down the center of the face and then another across the center of the face horizontally. Now what that's going to do is break it down into 4 sections, making it much easier to keep your lines nice and even and have symmetry. So I've completed the top half of the face first, just so you guys can see. But once you've finished your longest lines first, then you're going to join them all together with the little swoopy lines, and then repeat that same pattern on the back of the head until the entire thing is complete. Now we can add our eyes to finish our face. Doesn't that look awesome, guys? So before we can add these fondant decorations, we need to add our spider web made of buttercream. So I'm going to measure off my cake first before we do any piping. So I'm going to take my ruler and we're going to quarter this off to start. Then I'm going to add a couple of lines in between each quarter, giving me 12 sections in total, spaced nice and evenly. So at this point, if you like, you can start your spider web, but I do recommend refrigerating your cake first and allowing it to firm up completely. That way, if you make any minor mistakes, it'll be much easier to fix them without messing up the icing underneath. So to pipe our little black lines, I'm using a number 4 round piping tip, and I filled my piping bag about 1/3 of the way with some black American buttercream, and I've used AmeriColor Super Black to color my icing. So once I've finished filling in all my vertical lines and the lines across the top of the cake, we're going to work on filling in the little swoopy lines working horizontally. And this part is actually a little bit hard, so if you don't get it perfect, not to worry, it's still going to look super cool anyway. So you're going to bip that in the fridge for a minute because we still have one more decoration before we can assemble our cake. And this is just a little plate to sit on top of the cake that's going to make it look like he's bursting through the cake. So you're just going to cut a few lines in it, open it all up, and press them all down. Then we're going to pick up the entire plate and we're going to center it on the top of the cake, giving it a little press down to secure it into place. And then we can finish assembling our cake. So the first thing we're going to do is attach the head with our little toothpick as support, leaving enough room for the hands just beneath. Now, my hands were a little bit too big. I did have to cut a little bit off the wrists, but I made it work. And then I finished the cake off with our little spider decoration right down beneath. But no cake is complete without a ribbon around the cake board. So to balance it out, I went with blue. And didn't it turn out awesome, guys? I'm so in love with this cake. We are huge Spidey fans at my house, and it got my kids' seal of approval, but I hope it has your seal of approval too. If it does, please leave a like, a comment, subscribe to my channel, ring that bell, and I will see you all real soon.